the number one customer you are missing out on is the person walking in your restaurant. 92% of the people that walk in restaurants are not greeted in a way that makes them want to give the restaurant their information. So if somebody walks in your restaurant, you're a casual dining restaurant, instead of saying, hey, how are you? Because you don't care. Have you been here before? No, I've not. Well, then you're not a member of our VIP program. Did you know that if you scan this QR code, you get a free burger for your next visit? Pull your phone out. Let's go ahead and do it. Like, it's not hard. The number one person's information you need is the person that's already taken the hardest step, which is travel and decide to come to your restaurant. And then at that point, use the data.
Welcome to Whisking It All with your host, Angela Esposito, co-founder of Whisk.ai, a food and beverage intelligence platform. We're going to be interviewing hospitality professionals around the world to really understand how they do what they do. Welcome to another episode of Whisking It All. We're here today with Matt Plapp, the CEO of America's Best Restaurants and Dryver. Also the author of some really interesting books we'll get into, like Don't 86 Your Restaurant Sales. Did I get that right? There you go. And I think, was there one more or two more? I can't remember if you wrote 3 books or 2 books.
There's 3. There's also
Self-Help
Slices, which is a variation of Don't 86 Your Restaurant Sales. And then there's Restaurant Marketing That Works.
Okay. Let's see. I wasn't sure there was 2 or 3. So we'll get into those. So no worries. But I just want to first off say welcome to the show, Matt.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you have quite the experience when it comes to restaurant marketing in general. And, we'll get into America's Best Restaurants and the journey of, 1,000 restaurants and learning from all those people. But to kick things off, I'm curious to know, I think from what I read online, at least, you started in traditional radio ads before transitioning into digital marketing. So I'd love to know, what was the turning point that led you to kind of focus on restaurants?
Wow. Okay, so I started in the 90s in traditional media, and for whatever reason, I always gravitated to restaurants. My dad, as a kid, when I was a child, my dad had an insurance agency, and he had a lot of restaurants insured. So we spent a lot of time at his clients' restaurants. So I ate out a lot as a kid. And then when I was in radio, I was known as the trade king. Like in Cincinnati, where I'm at, the area, the big advertisers were taken, the car dealerships, the casinos. And so I went out and looked, and nobody's calling on these mom and pop restaurants. And so I went out and I had the ability to do cash and trade. And I knew that restaurants had no issue giving trade because to them it was free money. Most of it gets lost, especially in our world. And so I became the trade king. I had probably 40 or 50 restaurants that traded food for advertising. I used it as perks and also as gambling because we had a Pop-A-Shot in the office. I used to lose to Doug Smith, my COO, on Pop-A-Shot all the time. But that started it. And then in 2008, when I decided to start this company, I looked at the people who I thought could leverage my expertise the most. And back then it was my expertise. My focus was Facebook, which was, looking back 16 years ago, I still kind of crack up that I had a vision for what it ended up being. I wish I would have actually known the depth of what it was going to become. I just had a hunch. And then email marketing. And I said, okay, well, who can use an email over and over the most? Car dealer, they get it once. Somebody does or doesn't buy a car. They might buy one in 5 years. Restaurant, they can buy a burrito every week. And so that was the start of the restaurants. But the big reason in 2015, when I decided to go from a local company to a national restaurant firm, was I built a profile, an avatar of all of the decision makers I was dealing with. Because I had a business coach I talked to who said, Matt, you've got a skill set. You can make money in about 5 different places from what I can see. We had boat dealers, RV dealers, car dealers. We had golf courses and restaurants. I want you to create the profile of each one of your clients in that industry. Name them, what you hate about them, what you love about them, all this other stuff.
Right.
So to give you an example, one of my clients was a guy that I liked that owned 50 or so car dealerships, private jet, owned a professional sports team, big money.
Right.
There was nothing on the relatable side. Him and I had no shared interests, no hobbies. Like I'm not hopping on a PJ on the Texas to my ranch.
Right.
Where my restaurant clients, because at the time I had about 9, every one of them were friends. And I could relate with their grind and the blood, sweat, and tears, the elbow grease, to a point where one of my clients, Shaheen, is 2 offices behind me. He's a director of our sales now. He was a client for 7 years and owner for 28 years. And when he retired from the business 2 years ago, I stalked the hell out of him for a year, and he came and started working here. So
That's
that
awesome.
was the big reason why we shifted the restaurants was, number one, I saw the need for restaurants with regards to our skill set, which was capturing the attention of consumers and getting their data and then using it so it's easy to use. And I saw also people that I would go play golf with, that I would have dinner with, that I would go to a pool party with.
That's neat. That's really cool. And then for people listening, we're obviously going to go deep on both topics, but just to set the stage, can you tell them just briefly what is America's Best Restaurants, and then what is Dryver, and then obviously we'll dive more into the stories and how you help in this and that, but just to set the stage on what each company is basically.
I got a question for you quickly.
Tell me.
Is Whisk It All a playoff of Risk It All?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I originally saw that, one of my kids always like talks in a lisp messing around, and I'm like, whisk it all. I'm thinking, there we go.
Okay. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. So Whisk is obviously the food and beverage inventory platform, and then we came up with the name Whisking It All. And to be honest, the concept behind it was really, and you kind of mentioned it too, is people put their blood, sweat, and tears. That was the concept. It was like really what I love restaurateurs. I love the passion they have. I love entrepreneurs, period. But I find like restaurateurs are like the entrepreneur of the entrepreneur, because it's like the hardest of the hard. And so for me, that was where the idea came, is like, okay, they're really risking it all. They're putting everything on the line. Can we help them and try to help them with Whisk? And that's, paid software, but can we also just help them with tools like newsletters and podcasts? And that's where the idea originated from.
I saw the Whisking It All, and I was thinking, it's a play on words. I love it. But no, so where America's Best Restaurant started was, I had started this agency in 2008. 2015, we transitioned to working basically exclusively with restaurants nationwide.
Yeah. As
I would travel, I would constantly run into very intriguing stories about restaurant owners that I had never heard. And these are, I would be at a show, for example, speaking. I was in Newport Beach, California one time speaking. This guy, Joseph, invites me back to his restaurant. So I go back, and he's telling me how he started it. And I'm like, holy shit, this is so cool. But Joe, I'm looking at your website. This story's not on there. I'm looking at Facebook. You look like Five Guys Burger Joint. Like, this is a differentiator, man. And I realized that a lot of people weren't placing enough value on their personality, their connection to community, how they started this business. Like Nike. I don't know if you ever read the book about Phil Knight with Nike Shoe Dog.
Yeah.
But we all know what Nike is today.
Right.
We would never imagine some dude was broke as could be, driving around the high school track meet, selling shoes out of the back of his trunk to pay for dinner that night. Now that we know that, it's hard to connect because Nike is a $1 billion company.
Right.
But almost every local restaurant has that exact story. And I remember one restaurant in particular that I came across in one of these conversations, and they're telling me this crazy story how their mom and dad came over from Italy on this little rinky-dink boat. They showed me a picture of it. They're like 1 and 2 years old in this picture. They're now 70. And that was 3 sentences and a blurry picture on their website. I said, so let me get this right. The restaurant was started by your parents. It's named after your parents. The recipes are named after your family. And yet the homage you pay to that is 3 lame-ass sentences and a blurry picture. And they're like, so that was a start of it. I was like, okay, somebody's got to tell these stories. And so I started doing them with my phone. I'd take my iPhone out, put it on a tripod. We'd go live on the restaurant's Facebook page. And I'd say, hey, you don't know who I am. I'm Matt Plapp. I'm a restaurant marketing consultant. I've written a few books, but who cares about that? Let's talk about this guy. Have you heard how he started this restaurant? It's crazy. But turn to him, tell me. And that was kind of the start. And then at that point, I started to see how well those were working. And I thought, well, my lame video just got all this attention for this restaurant, and they didn't really do anything on their Facebook page because all they do is puke their food on people. So then I looked at the next thing. I said, okay, how could I leverage this to build a business? And I said, okay, where's the number one place that has consumers' attention? It's Yelp back then. And then number 2, what is the other place that has a lot of attention? It was diners, drive-ins, and dives and shows like that on cable.
Okay.
Well, cable's dying. Like, I knew that 10 years ago. It's put a fork in it now. It's done. If it wasn't for the pharmaceutical industry and 90-year-old people still watching, it'd be done.
Right.
But then you look at Yelp, and Yelp did not have the friendships with the restaurants because it's not a relationship they liked because they didn't control the reviews. At least couldn't get bad ones removed that were wrong or inaccurate, and they couldn't control the narrative of the pictures. And so I said, what if we created a media company that, number one, started with the restaurant owner's story and their side of it on display. And then number two, we didn't take it to cable, but we took it to where people are, Facebook. And so I created America's Best Restaurants. I bought the .net back then. We didn't have any damn money. And I started doing some generic stuff with it. By 2021, I realized that we had to go to a new level. Since then, like the budget right now for next year is $4.5 million. So it's not cheap.
Okay, wow.
30 or so employees on that team. And we will film at ballpark 800 restaurants next year. And the idea...
In 1 year?
Yeah, 1 year. Yeah.
Okay, so just to repeat that for people listening, 800 restaurants, because you said that subtly. So 800 restaurants in 1 year. Wow.
We're at 4 today. Like if I go to my calendar right now, I'll go to my other screen, I'll go to van 1, van 2. We are in the Point Restaurant in Sweet Home, Oregon. We are in Dungan Store in Monticello, Kentucky.
Wow.
We are in Bedrocks on the Bay in Winchester Bay, Oregon. I lied. We're at 3 restaurants today. So we're typically at 3 to 4 a day, Monday through Friday. And we're constantly evolving that. But the idea behind that was I want to do, we personally vet the restaurants. Yep. It's a paid marketing program if you're accepted into it, because it's not every restaurant.
Right.
Because not every restaurant is a place I would eat at every week. That was the ground level of this. I want to highlight restaurants Matt Plapp would take his wife and kids to every week. Sometimes that's a badass burger joint. Sometimes that's a high-end steakhouse. Cool. But if it's locally owned and operated, independently owned, there's no corporation, it's not a big chain or a franchise. That was the basis. And then we built up from there 10 points of they have to check off these 10 boxes. And if they check off 7 of the 10, that's fine. 5 of the 10, we got a problem. But we tell them, hey, we think your restaurant's cool, but look at your bathrooms. Like, have you updated that in like 20 years, my guy? Like, we want to be a place that I would come in if I was a young Matt Plapp, my kids were in diapers, that I would still want to come change them in that restroom and not feel like I was going to get hepatitis. So, we do run across that. But that was the vision. And so we started doing that with 5 of us. We had myself, my marketing director, my COO, one of my sales guys, and then one of my office assistant. And I bought a Mercedes Sprinter van. We packed it up. We drove it from Chicago and back. We filmed at 5 restaurants. And then at that point, took it to Florida, had it wrapped, took it to Naples, Florida, and drove from Naples, Florida to the UP in Michigan and filmed at like 300 restaurants in 6 months. It was 348 restaurants. And that was in 2021. And that was for free. We spent close to $2 million to just figure out. And I was not smart enough to know that we probably shouldn't have done that. But you look back and you don't really watch the account too closely some days. And you look back, oh man, go figure. We got 8 people flying to New York and back. Okay, that cost this much money. But we got to 2022. We analyzed what we did right, what we did wrong, and we've been tweaking it ever since. And so my ultimate vision with America's Best Restaurants, and if you go to mattplapp.live/VV, you can see our vision. I don't know if you've ever seen a Vivid Vision or not, but Vivid Vision's a book that you write out 3 years where you're going to be. And so there's an entire vision of our headquarters I want to have in 3 years, but this is the part on America's Best Restaurants on what I envision that brand being. And I envision it being a mouthpiece for the independent restaurants. And then we debut all of the stuff we do for these restaurants on their Facebook page so that they can get the exposure on their channel, not some cable channel.
Really cool.
Really quickly, Dryver is a restaurant marketing platform that we've always done really well at Facebook ads and Instagram ads to get somebody to say, I want a free burger. And then we can drive 1 out of those 3 people that raise their hand into the restaurant within 2 weeks. Well, a year ago, I bought a platform, a software that we could tie into it so we can connect with point of sales and help restaurants have a better customer journey based on the consumer using or not using the restaurant on a consistent basis.
Okay. Wow. Very, very cool. By the way, that whole Vivid Vision thing's pretty cool. I'm going to look into that after this episode. I love that. Big fan. I mean, I have my little vision board, but like that book thing is quite interesting. And so I'm curious to know how, like, definitely go deeper, but in terms of the 800 restaurants, it seems like in the past you were pretty much a big part of filming it, but now, you mentioned there's 3 going on today. So are you not? So it's not you anymore. Like you're not physically there now. It's you have a host. You got someone there. Like it's just its own machine kind of thing.
Yeah. So early on, it was me, Doug, and Luis, who still all work here. We're all 3 in the office today. That were the hosts, and Luis still is a host 1 week a month because he's really damn good.
Okay.
Doug doesn't host anymore, but he's pretty good. I suck, so I'm not a host. We did it early on, not really knowing. We wanted the restaurant owner to be the center of it, but then we realized about a year in how bad of actors restaurant owners are, which they should be. Right. And you ask somebody, hey, tell me in 60 seconds about your restaurant, and 30 minutes later you're off camera. And so we started looking around and we started realizing there was a lot of talent on TV. And so three of our current hosts are former TV news anchors and reporters. Oh. That came from corporate America, one from Arizona, one from the Gulf Shores of Alabama, and then one from Nashville, Tennessee. And then we went out. We also had a couple of us that were just learning how to use video cameras. And so we went out and bought a bunch of expensive equipment, learned how to use it. And then once we got to a certain point, we're like, well, maybe we should hire better video people. And so those people graduated internally to different operations positions. And we hired professional videographers that were people that were out freelance on their own. And that's pretty cool for a lot of video people. Then you realize like you don't have a bill next month or a check because you got nothing booked. So it's a steady job over here.
Wow, that's super neat. And I think there's a lesson in there for sure of just the idea of like do things before it's, you're fully ready. Like just figure it out, take those first steps. Like in the software world, we always talk about the concept of like an MVP, like don't delay, you shouldn't be proud of your product, just like like get that feedback cycle shorter. So like it sounds like you were on top of that from that perspective, like figuring it out on the go, filming, going to 300 restaurants, looking at the budget after. But it worked out, which is awesome. And one thing that comes to mind is, visiting over 1,000 restaurants and, obviously studying their marketing strategies. I'm sure there's no shortage of info you could share. But for our listeners who are listening in, any directional advice you can give when it comes to marketing your restaurants? Like I know that's a loaded question because you visit 1,000 restaurants, but if you can maybe point people in the right direction and maybe share some of your lessons you've learned.
Let me start with what not to do.
Yeah, that's fair.
Do not hope and pray. That is unfortunately what we see most restaurants doing. I went on the road 2 weeks ago to Iowa and I went to 3 of the restaurants. I watched our crew do their things. I talked to the owners. All 3 of them have majority of what every restaurant has in common, hope and pray. Man, I hope that Matt had a great meal today. I pray he decides to come back at some point in the future. And in our building, we teach our team, we want to help restaurants aim and expect. That if somebody walks in your restaurant, be hospitable, have a conversation with them, find a way to get their information. Like I keep this on my desk, this growler. It's got money in it. I'm like, if I'm a restaurant and I sell beer growlers, I'm going to have a growler with a QR code in the back. And when people walk in, I'm going to say, hey, you want to win $100 cash? Hell yeah. Do me a favor, scan this QR code. It's going to take you to a Facebook post. Guess how much money is in that jar? And when you do it, it's going to ask you some questions in Messenger. You can enter the competition and somebody's going to win $100. Well, now you just got them to have a little fun. They went to Facebook. They engaged with your post. If you have it hooked up correctly to Messenger, you can now get their email and their phone number, pop them into whatever marketing platform you use. Yeah. And now you have a database you can aim at and you can expect an outcome. Because what we have seen is that if you have an offer that is high value, that doesn't suck, so one that they say people would feel stupid saying no to. So if you got a Facebook post that says, Angelo, do you want a free cheeseburger? Click below to get it. Okay, who doesn't want a free cheeseburger? Yep. Click below. 1 out of 3 people will walk in your restaurant within a few weeks with that promo. So now you've got an audience that you can at least aim at. In the past, when I sent them something really high value, I could expect this outcome. Now, granted, you can't give away free cheeseburgers all the time. You can come up with promotions. And if you are selling growlers at your restaurant, where that growler promotion came from was one of our clients, Hofbrauhaus Pittsburgh and Newport and Columbus here in the Midwest, this is back in 2015, wanted to start selling growlers. They were having no luck. And I said, okay, well, we've got this database of these Stein Masters between all 3 stores, like 600 people. Why don't we just call them and make them an offer really good for them to take the beer home their next time here? Like we were just shotgun. They were wanting to shotgun everybody. I'm like, no, we have an audience of people who pay to be in a beer club here. I can't think of anybody else that might want a growler of beer. Sure enough, we got their emails. We sent out a marketing message. Hey, we got a limited availability. You get a free growler when you do this, and you come in and get it filled with beer, have fun. 2,500 of them gone in 2 days.
2,500. Wow. That's really neat. Okay. So I like that. So don't just hope and pray. I mean, you could do it in addition, but don't just hope and pray.
Aim and expect. We have an acronym we use internally. And I've got a book I want to write on eventually, but I haven't really figured out how to put it together how I want to. Okay. It's ABR, attract, build, retain. And yes, it stands for America's Best Restaurants. That was one of the original plays. But cool. Attract, build, retain. Your marketing plan's number one thing is to attract attention. Yeah. That if you attract enough attention over and over and over, even if you suck at the build and retain, if you attract attention over and over, what always has attention on an expressway? A car wreck. No matter what. You and I have seen 100 car wrecks. We see one of car burning, we're still looking at it.
That's true.
So if you can attract attention over and over, you will win at some level. If you can take that attention and use it to build a database, now you've got one more step. You got one more piece of the puzzle, because if you have Matt Plapp's email, cell phone number, messenger subscription, you now have 3 ways to easily get a hold of me on your own time. And then the last part is retain. Once you get somebody's data, don't use it wrong. We ran across a restaurant recently that was sending an email Monday through Friday, every week of the year to his entire database. And I said, bro, if my wife emailed me 5 days a week, I would opt out. If my favorite pizza joint did, I might stop coming out of spite.
Right. No, that's aggressive. 5 days a week is really aggressive.
And so it's ABR, attract, build, retain. Attract attention with your marketing, build a database with that attention, and then use the database to retain your customers' attention and retain their business. Because what's your favorite pizza place?
I mean, it's a local place here, but in terms of chains,
give me a local place.
Yeah, it's called Sagra. Sagra, right near my house. I live in Miami. Love it. Italian joint, great pizza.
So if you drove by that restaurant every single day 4 times and you saw their sign, it's going to influence X amount of visits a year, because you're like, oh shit, that sounds good tonight.
True.
If you get an email from them every 10 to 14 days that relates to you, open it, it's going to influence. If you see a Facebook post, an Instagram post, a tweet, it's going to influence you. So the goal of marketing is, how do I get more attention of yours? And the biggest problem we see, this would be my other tip, is stop sucking at marketing today. Like, most restaurants have turned their digital marketing into a coupon magazine. I mean, you go on Facebook and all it is a picture of their food, a picture of their drinks, a picture of their patio.
It's so true.
It's not social media. You didn't get a Facebook page to turn into Valpak. Yeah. If you're going to use your social media, use it correctly. Engage your audience. I saw a restaurant yesterday in Philadelphia who highlighted the high school football team and their big win. And give me a hell yeah or something below if you love their big win. People are commenting. Another guy had 3 kids that pulled up on their bikes. And he's like, hey, these little guys come all the time after school. What was your favorite place to go after school to get food? People are commenting. That is social media. It's not advertising pizza, because if your restaurant's name is, Strong's Brick Oven Pizza, I can probably figure out that you sell pizza. I don't need a picture of pizza every day.
It's so true. It reminds me of almost Instagram version 1.0 when it came out. That's almost how everyone used it. It was just very much just photo album, but your public photo album, so to speak. And I think you're right. Restaurants use it like that. And the restaurants that are doing it right, you nailed it, are telling a story. But it seems like there's a lot of restaurants that are still stuck in the version 1.0 of just displaying food and beverage. Yeah. That makes sense. And so for people listening, so that's good advice. So definitely aim and expect. ABR, love that too. Attract, build, retain. What are some when you go see a restaurant and they're not telling their story right? Like you said, they only put 3 lines. What's the first thing they can think of? So for people listening, what's the first thing they can maybe act on when they're like, all right, I don't know what I'm doing on my marketing side. What's maybe a first step to at least get the ball rolling for them? You
got this phone?
Yep.
You got a camera?
Yep.
Put it on video and tell a sincere story. Why'd you start the business? Why did you pick pizza? Why'd you pick that neighborhood? I saw a restaurant the other day. I asked them the same question. Curious. Why did you become a pizza restaurant in this neighborhood? I'm from here. I didn't think we had any good pizza. I had a skill of pizza. I came back home. I'm going to give back to my community. I connected with them. And so tell that story. The only reason cable actually had its last leg under it for so long was reality TV. I mean, think of all the reality shows on MTV. I mean, MTV just keeps replaying Rob Deere all the time. All reality TV, Big and Rob, Ridiculousness, Fantasy Factory, all reality TV. You as a restaurant owner have the ability to create a reality TV show for free. And here's the part that people get hung up on is the view counter. So we had an Instagram video that went viral, got like 10 million views. One of my camera guys on the other side of the camera right now filming me. And we got stuck for a little bit on like, oh my God, we got 10 million views. The next one better have 10 million. Oh shit, the next one gets 500. That sucks. We're terrible. We're leaving Instagram. And I'm like, hold on. If 500 restaurant owners walked in our office right now and wanted to talk to me, I'd be pretty happy.
Exactly.
And so from a restaurant standpoint, quit looking at the view counter. Yes, it might only be your mom and your grandma and your wife watching the video to start.
Yeah.
But you'll be amazed at how quickly it builds traction, especially if you're sincere and you're not on there spouting your nonsense and trying to sell food. Get on there and say, hey, you won't believe what happened today. Guy pulled his car up, hit the wrong pedal, drove through the front window, check this shit out, look at the window, cost 20 grand. Highlight your employee that just became valedictorian. Tell them, hey, this is my grandma's pizza. You want to make pizza at home? Here's what I would do if I was you. I mean, one of the most popular videos back in the 90s for auto repair shops was a video online that taught people how to change their own oil. People watched the video, were like, oh, okay, filter, that wrench, something put my car up on, oil. Right. Okay, yeah, I'm not doing that. Go get my oil changed. Same thing. Like, show people the magic. Show Matt Plapp how to make a pizza. I got a pizza oven for Christmas last year. Haven't used it yet.
My wife asked to use it.
I don't have a pizza. And I'm like, do I want to waste $30 on a shitty pizza that I make that I don't like? Go eat pizza at somebody like Strong's.
That's funny.
And so, reality. Turn this camera around. Use it to tell a story. This is a media company. It's not a phone. I mean, most of the stuff we do on our phones, I haven't called anybody.
Right. I love that. No, that makes sense. So for people listening, great first step. Literally pick up your phone, start filming, post to Insta, post to Facebook, post to TikTok, whatever it is, and start telling your story. So I definitely love that. And then I guess from there, right, you're building your story. I think there's something to be said about, consistency. It's one thing I learned, the hard way too, but just the idea of like, similar to your story is like not focusing too much on the views, because sometimes it could be underwhelming, but if you make the goal the output, it makes it a lot more achievable. So one little mindset that maybe can help, and I think it's helped me, is like make the goal the output. So if you tell yourself, okay, I want to post 3 videos a week till the end of the year. If that's your goal and you focus on that, short term, it helps keep your eye on the target, because then you're not sad or happy or emotional if things are high views, low views, because you're like, hey, my goal was getting 3 videos a week till the end of the year. So it's a little shift, but I find it works, because then when you do that, you get better at doing it because you're doing it consistently. So even if you suck, you just get better. And then number 2, you also just learn, because now you have, 100 videos out, and you just see what are people engaging with and what are they liking. So little tidbit that I learned that I just want to share, but curious to know from your perspective, like how have you gotten better at like telling stories?
Reps. You got to take the reps. Like, I'll tell you this. My first ever video I did live was at Hofbrauhaus Pittsburgh in their beer garden. Guess how many live viewers I had when I was filming it?
20. 0. Okay.
I remember, like, you can see the view counter on your phone. I'm like, come on, Mom, where are you at? Like,
give me something. Give me something.
Nobody watched it, but here's the cool part. The video was terrible. Like, do I want somebody watching me be terrible? Like, one of my employees wants to shoot some hoops, wants to play one-on-one. And I'm like, hey, let me get my legs back under me. Give me about 6 months to where I'm not as bad as I am right now. And then at least I'll look somewhat like I'll represent a little.
Yeah.
But the cool part about video is that, number 1, majority of people aren't going to get a whole lot of views.
Yeah.
And number 2, you get your reps out of the way with no views.
Yeah.
And then the third part of it is everybody watching you thinks you're doing great, because there's no way in hell they're getting on camera. And so that's a cool thing too, that most people you run across have never done a video like that. And so the 3 things I have seen that put you way above everybody else: get on video, get on a stage, and write a book. So if you're an owner of a restaurant, by getting on video, you've done what nobody else does anyways. I mean, how many people do you know that get on video every single day that aren't in marketing? Not many.
Yeah, it's true.
And you get your reps. And then number 2, get out there and speak. That's a big thing. Like, a lot of restaurant owners, Sean Walchef, a friend of mine, Avery Ward
Sean's
up there.
Great.
Avery Ward up at Little Italy in Columbus, Ohio. Like, he's always going to chamber events and to schools and speaking. That hones your craft, also gives you some good content.
Yeah.
Third part that I see very rarely is writing a book. Think about how, if somebody walked in a restaurant, I owned XYZ pizza restaurant, and I had my book on the counter, even if nobody bought it, it's like, holy shit, that's the guy that owns it. That's the book he wrote on why he built this pizza restaurant, or his history. I think Sean has a book. I want to say it's on his family in Bulgaria, something, or his grandpa.
Right. Yeah. If I remember, we had Sean on the show. If I remember correctly, his story of how he's basically raised by his grandparents, and so he's very close with. Really cool. No, Sean's a great example of storytelling, and he's that top 1%. But it's something to strive to, and I love the message. And speaking of books, it's perfect segue because I wanted to get into that. So like, you've written multiple books on restaurant marketing. So first, I'd love to know what inspired you to write the books, and then we'll get into each book and just kind of what's it about and where people can find it. But tell me a bit about the story behind why you wanted to get your thoughts on paper and share it.
So I was looking for ideas on marketing restaurants, and there was nothing out there. And the stuff I found was so generic. I'm not a big fan of reach and impressions. Yes, I understand if I do a Facebook ad right now, I could turn it on tomorrow for a restaurant, in a month probably reach 30,000 people, have 60,000 impressions. Who cares? I want to see engagements. I want to see engagements that led to data. I want to see data that led to sales. And so I was trying to find tools like that to sharpen my own saw, and they weren't out there. And so then I started thinking about it, and I was telling different restaurants, and one of the restaurants, I go, point me in the right direction. I'm like, well, there's really nothing. And so I came up with the idea of writing a book. And the way it came about was I was at a conference, and I watched a guy at the conference out in San Diego called Traffic and Conversions on how to write a book. And afterwards, I talked to him, and I said, hey, he had this idea. Put in the middle of the bullseye, write the end goal. What do you want this book to help restaurant owners do? Like, number one, who's it helping? Number two, what's it helping them do? Restaurant owners, put butts in seats. Okay. How do you do that? I'm like, well, I do this, this, and this. And he's like, okay, let me ask you a question. Do you have a system? It sounds like you have like a factory goal. Like, yeah, we pump hundreds of restaurant marketing campaigns out. And he's like, what do you use to build them? Like, we use a product called Asana that I can hire an employee and go, hey, you're in charge of this. They go to Asana. There's an SOP. It's like, do this, do this, do this. He goes, there's your book. Every chapter is your Asana build. I'm like, holy crap. I pulled up Asana, and I'm like, this is what you do. So I wrote it out and said, if I was a restaurant owner, here's what I would do. Here's how you create your ad. Here's how you create your call to action. Here's how you create the messenger flow. Here's how you create the email follow-up. And it had all the stuff in there. Now, I also did it with kind of a bias here, maybe. I knew that what I was saying in the book was really, really technical. And so in the book, there was call to actions for people to go online and join a training and get some downloads. And I knew that 9 out of 10 restaurants should, in their right mind, read the book and then go, I'm not doing that stuff. I don't know how to use that software. I don't know how to use Zapier and Twilio. Right. And so I knew that there was going to be inherent people that took the route differently. So then the second version of that book was Sell More Slices. I wrote another version of it. I was speaking at a conference in Austin, Texas for a company called ManyChat. It was like the first ever Facebook Messenger conference.
Yeah. ManyChats, we use them.
Yeah. And so I spoke there at that conference. We were the first ever person to use it, like for restaurants at a high level.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Hundreds of restaurant owners. And so I redid the book called Sell More Slices. It was geared around pizza restaurants because at that point we had probably worked with about 100 pizza restaurants. Okay. And we had some case studies like, there's no doubting this. And then the last book I wrote I was writing it the year before the pandemic hit. I was almost going to be done in April of 2020. And it was called Restaurant Marketing That Works, Back to the Basics. And the idea was around everything I preach. Well, then the pandemic came. We ended up publishing it that August, I think. And my publisher called me and said, hey, should we change the name of this? Because COVID hit, the pandemic, what changed with your marketing? I said, nothing. And so we changed the subtitle from Back to the Basics to Before, During, and After the Pandemic, because everything in the book is what worked before, it worked during, it's worked after. There was no solution. The only thing that anybody changed during the pandemic that probably helped them was online ordering. Everything else was the basics of, how to run a marketing campaign.
Yeah. Online ordering and QR codes made a comeback.
Oh, yeah.
Big comeback.
What's funny is this company with these growlers back in the day, I had I'm talking like back in 2013, 14. I had QR codes on every table topper, and you had to download an app to use it. And I think back, like, was I a dumbass? Like, who's going to download an app just to scan that code to go to a page? Like, put the URL in there. But I'm like, I'm making QR codes work.
That's awesome. No, that's great. And for people who want, we'll do a full plug at the end for everything, but just real quick for people who want to catch those books, where's the best place they can go?
MattPlapp.com, and there's
Perfect.
a tab on there for the books, and there's a link to each
Perfect.
one on Amazon.
Perfect. Okay, love it, love it. And then jumping a bit into kind of the rise of these digital platforms and just online ordering in general, especially post COVID world. I mean, it was always there, but probably accelerated the hell out of it. How has that kind of affected restaurant marketing? Like, what are some trends you've seen since online ordering obviously really took off, and now things have obviously been evolving? Have you seen certain trends change in the marketing landscape when it comes to restaurant marketing?
Something that I don't like that I'm hoping to change with Dryver is I think everybody's went to a Frankenstein approach. They've got data in their point of sale, data on these third-party sites, data inside their online ordering, data inside this app. I talk to restaurants that have 5 or 6 platforms that have customer data, and like none of them are communicating, none of them are being used. I had a guy talk to yesterday. He's got 80,000 people in a database on his website that they rarely use because he's not sure. Like, you go to their website and you opt into this VIP program, but it's not connected to their point of sale, and it's not connected to their loyalty, and it's not connected to this. And I'm like, no wonder you're not using it. It's a Frankenstein. So what I've seen happen is restaurants are typically, from what I've seen, 10 to 15 years behind what's happening. Like the stuff that we preach right now with Facebook Lives, you could have been doing that 10 years ago. Yeah. And so they're now starting to get it. So with regards to data, a lot of these restaurants with the pandemic, I remember my favorite smoothie shop, a place called Better Blend, didn't have online ordering before the pandemic. I used to always say stuff to him. I know the guy. COVID hits. Oh shit, I better get online ordering. Next day, he's got his Toast online order and something turned on. He's good to go. And now it's like every order I place, I order from his place 5 days a week. It's always online. Ordered online, drive up, pick it up, and leave. And so a lot of guys like that came around quicker than they normally would have to things that they didn't do. Yes. And when that happened, they've got a lot of one-off solutions sit in places. So they've got a Frankenstein marketing plan. So it's now time to kind of corral it and go, okay, I've got data in these 5 places. How do I get it to one place?
Right.
How do I use it consistently, correctly?
Right. Yeah. What can you consolidate? And we've seen that too. It's funny because like for the longest time, Whisk has started in 2014. And so when we started, it was a bit hard to not convince, but like inventory was like, whatever. Like it was always a core part of the operations, but it was like maybe a bit more of a backseat. But like, post COVID, it was like people, during COVID, people had to take care of their supplies and not over order. And, they really started paying attention to these things. And so we saw that too, that adoption. And I agree with you. I think restaurants are definitely like 10, 15 years behind. But COVID probably got them to accelerate adoption of certain certain technology. But out of curiosity, why do you think that restaurants, because I always think about this, why do you think restaurants are like 10, 15 years behind when it comes to adopting technology?
Because I think that I'll put restaurants and gym owners in the same bucket because I used to own a gym. I owned a gym, a business partner that ran it. And he reminded me a lot of restaurants because very hands-on, very involved in running the business. Now, the difference was Casey only had 6 classes a day, so he had 4 hours in between to do other stuff. You're a restaurant owner, and you get up, you roll out of bed 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, you go to the office, you go to the restaurant, you got U.S. food showing up, you got to inventory your food, you're making sure somebody closed it correctly. Next thing you know, you turn around, something's wrong, the restaurant opens up, somebody is sick, they didn't show up. Yeah. Now you're waiting tables, now you're bussing tables, now you're doing the, whatever, you're making the food. And you turn around at 6 o'clock at night and you're beat down, you're going to your kid's soccer game, you get home, you go to sleep, you repeat. So I think number one is that I believe restaurant owners, and I've worked at my business from 2008, 2015, we served 31 verticals. I had every vertical you can imagine. Auto repair, car dealerships, home builders, window companies. The ones that I saw that were in the trenches the most were the restaurant owners. And the gyms, I had a few gyms too, and they reminded me a lot of it, except they had downtime to screw around. The restaurants, there ain't much downtime because when you show up, it's open up. Yeah. And when you open up, it's run and gun. And then 2 o'clock, the PFG food truck pulls up and you got to unload it. And then 5 o'clock, you're hitting the dinner rush and your wife's calling you and you can't be at the soccer game because somebody didn't show up. I mean, it's a nonstop. I think that's the key element. Number two, I take this from the tech to the marketing side, is they've been burned a lot. Marketing, 9 out of 10 people that I run across in restaurant marketing, not to be mean, but are morons. And I was probably that moron 20 years ago, to be quite honest with you, because you think you have an idea and you run and gun and you spout it to everybody you have, and you have no proof. Hey, like we had a guy the other day reached out to us, wants to integrate with our platform. And I'm like, well, how many clients do you guys work with? We have 3. Like, we have like 3. Like, come back when you got, I don't want to be a jerk, but like come back when you got 100. Because when I learned after 100 versus my first 3,
it's
night and day. The brewery, I had a QR code app on a table topper thinking people were going to download. I'm a dumbass. Like nobody's downloading an app to get a QR code just to go to the website. Like I was stupid as can be back then. So I think that they've been burned so many times. And then also you go to the food shows and it's not hard to get a booth. It's not hard to make your booth look bigger than it is. And then it turns out that you bought this piece of tech that has not really been around long and doesn't really do what you want it to do. The point of sales are some of the worst. I mean, we've got really good integrations with, Arrow point of sale, for example. Those guys are legit. They're restaurant owners. They built an amazing point of sale. But then you go to another place and you hear from this guy and he's like, oh, it turns out he's just a credit card salesman that has a white labeled point of sale that doesn't actually, you can't make a pizza on it. And these people buy this because it's cheap, it's quick, they get promised. That guy makes a commission and rolls out. So I think it's a combination of probably 75% no time to figure it out and 25% frustration from the past. And they're like, you know what? I'm just going to stick to a pen and a piece of paper. Like, Corey, the number of restaurants I see doing inventory manually still. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, what year are we in?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. People always ask, who's your big competitor? I'm like, look, we have a couple of people in the space, but honestly, it's still pen and paper or Excel. Like people are still just majority doing pen and paper and Excel.
I'll give you an inventory story you'll laugh at.
Yeah, please.
So one of our clients had 3 restaurants. It was a fast casual restaurant. And he was complaining to his food provider, his distributor, about the prices of steaks recently. He's like, what are you talking about, man? He's like, this is going back. I think it was probably, God, when this happened with Bob. And I remember this like it was yesterday. Bob was the guy's name. And I want to say it was like 2013, 14. And the guy, and I was there, like I witnessed the whole thing and I had no clue what was going on. Like I didn't really know. I knew that this was their mainline distributor. I didn't understand like the conversation of inventory. And he's like, yeah, man, I'm looking at our P&L and like our food costs and especially our steaks is to the roof. And he's like, Bob, the price of steaks has not changed in like 3 months. So like, I don't know what you're talking about. So Bob's like, okay, so he's doing inventory on a clipboard, right?
Yeah.
And so he's still doing old school inventory. And this probably back then, it's all there was.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there and he watches after about a month of trying to figure it out. He's watching the one kitchen worker walk out back with a garbage bag and throws it next to the dumpster. He's like, that lazy ass. Like, why did he not just throw that garbage in the dumpster? So he walks out, he goes to grab the bag and it's heavy. It's the steaks. And so then he starts watching this guy every week go in the thing, steak delivery show up, 15 steaks, garbage bag, put it next to the dumpster. Later on, come back, grab it and leave. Wow. And it wasn't his food price went up. It said he didn't have inventory control in place to know that his steaks were going to the dumpster, not at a table. And so like I cracked up because Bob was like, man, I was such a jerk to my rep. And here it was. And Bob, I knew what brought the whole conversation up. We always used to give Bob a hard time because Bob was a smoker and he went back and forth, had some cancer issues and still wouldn't quit smoking. It was going back and forth. And he's like, well, I guess the smoking did something good. I was outside smoking and watched him not throw the garbage away. And had I not been back there, I would have never noticed that he didn't put the garbage in the dumpster.
It's hilarious.
And off. He's like, so at least we can
silver lining. Yeah.
The smoking did something right this week.
That's funny. That's crazy though, but it's true. It's true. And that's the thing is like, I always tell people, it's like restaurants they'll be the first to tell you how much they made revenue wise. Like, oh, we made 20,000 this week. But when you tell them, okay, how much profit did you make in terms of, cost of goods, like subtract the cost, it's like, they have no idea. And that's why it's like, it's 2024. Like I always encourage people, like the 2 biggest costs in your restaurant are going to be your labor and your cost of goods sold. Invest in something, whether it's a person and a software, but like investing in those 2 spaces is usually a good idea because it's the majority of your costs, right? So your prime costs basically. That's awesome. And then, one last question, and we'll probably start wrapping things up, but I know, you emphasize like the idea of, and you've done it today too, but of building a strong customer database. So like, for the smaller independent restaurants listening, how can they capitalize on and maybe compete with the larger restaurants? Like, what recommendations can you give to them to perhaps start thinking about building that customer database?
So, number one, I keep this book on my desk for this reason.
I love that book. I got one. Where's mine? So I got the
here's
the marketing. Oh, wait, no, sorry. Hold on. Sorry. Now I know where I keep mine.
Well, here, you'll love this. We were one of the early clients of Hermosi at Gym Launch. I knew him. Like my gym that I owned, we were a client of his like 2016.
Okay, so when he talks about Gym Launch and going out and the irresistible offer, you were one of those gyms that took that offer.
Yeah, so first I'll say this. Restaurants, how to make an offer so good people feel stupid saying no to.
Yeah.
The number one customer you are missing out on is the person walking in your restaurant. 92% of the people that walk in restaurants are not greeted in a way that makes them want to give the restaurant their information. So if somebody walks in your restaurant, you're a casual dining restaurant, instead of saying, hey, how are you? Because you don't care.
Yeah.
Have you been here before? No, I've not. Well, then you're not a member of our VIP program. Did you know that if you scan this QR code, you get a free burger for your next visit? Pull your phone out. Let's go ahead and do it. Like, it's not hard.
Yeah.
The number one person's information you need is the person that's already taken the hardest step, which is travel and decide to come to your restaurant.
Yeah.
And then at that point, use the data. Give them an irresistible reason to come back, like a free burger their next visit. And then after that, get them with like a free dessert or an appetizer, because if I come to your restaurant and have a great dessert, I'm going to have it again in the future. I went to a restaurant called Casano's in Dayton, Ohio the other day. They have 33 locations. They had this appetizer like folded over cheese bread. I've never tasted like it. There is there's zero chance I would not order it every time.
That's
and so
awesome.
if they gave that to a consumer and said they want to raise their average check, because the easiest way to increase your sales is to get the people who already know, like, and trust you to buy more money or buy more often from you.
Right.
Well, if you have my information and you know I'm a loyal customer, it's not real hard to get me to come back with that information and a bribe or even just a reminder. And then if you have my information and you want me to spend more money, send me a free dessert. I come in, you got a badass dessert. I get it for free one time. Now I've eaten it 20 times since then at $10 a pop. So that's a big element. That's the biggest, easiest, lowest hanging fruit. And then from there, you take that to online. The second most important place is your website. People ordering there. If I go to your website, there should be a pop-up that comes up and says, like, get a free burger. Click here. Like, everybody's website only gathers information when somebody's spending money. There are a lot of consumers kicking the tire. They're looking at some place to eat at. They pop over there. Oh, here's this restaurant. You need to be able to capture their information. And then the third place is social media engagement. If you can get people to engage and take them to a place where they give you their information, it all revolves around data. We had a restaurant recently who increased his online data from his website from 30 people to 130 each month over 12 months.
Nice.
In our system in Dryver, his sales inside the system went up 32%.
Wow. Okay.
His database grew by 350%. His sales went by 32 because 1 out of every 3 to 4 customers that get their data came in from his website came to the restaurant. And then they come back. I looked in there at one particular guy. He was a brand new customer a year ago, 19 times since then. I can promise if we wouldn't have gotten his email and his cell phone number and his birthday, we probably wouldn't have driven half those visits.
Wow. That's awesome. That's really awesome. I love it. Honestly, I could talk to you for hours, and it's so cool that you were one of the first Hermosi customers. I was an early Hermosi fan, like always learning from him. I was on a podcast actually a few weeks ago. I think at this point I was talking about how generally I try to read a few new books every year, but this year I found myself rereading this and $100 Million Marketing Leads, because it's like you're always picking up something new, and then I'll zoom in on one chapter, and it's really interesting to just apply, because if you're reading to read, then it's just entertainment. But if you're reading to implement stuff, then it's education.
What's even more depressing, though, is when you were part of the journey. Like when we became a Gym Launch client, it was May, I want to say, of 2016 or 17. I think it was 17.
Okay.
And it was $16,000 to sign up. But it was like, hey, if in a month you do not have your money back, we'll give it back to you. Pay us $8,000 now, $8,000 then. We did $40,000 in sales with his stuff in a month at the gym. And I was a marketing professional. That's my job.
Yeah.
But the gym, I was a restaurant guy.
So that really stuck with you, right? The irresistible offer. Not only did you read it, but it worked on you.
And we were already doing it with restaurants. But it was funny was the way he was building his company was different than any marketing company I'd ever seen. It was all do it yourself. Like there was no help. You paid 16 grand to get access to his website to learn how to do all this marketing crap. Thank goodness I knew how to do it. It was easy, but it was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Oh, I like what he did there. And I'm not a gym guy, so I don't know how to sell crap in the gym. He was. And that really stuck with me. And it was even funnier was years later is, you know, we were a client for like 2 years, and then I got out of the gym business. My partner, I think, eventually canceled the program because it was a heavy lift to put his stuff in place. But it's funny, you turn around a couple years later and here he is selling his companies for $80 million. You're like, I was on Zoom calls with him. We were on calls all the time where he would get on every couple of weeks and he would review stuff. And then I talked to him a year and a half ago about his acquisition at .com, about investing in us possibly. And, you know, didn't take it anywhere because time wasn't really interested in it. Plus I don't think we were a good fit for them.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so to wrap things up, this is great. I had a fun conversation. We'll definitely have you back on the show and just catch up on updates. But just to wrap up, I'm sure people want to find you. I know you got newsletter, you got books, you got your own podcast. So just a chance to plug away your website, your books, your newsletter, your whatever socials you want to share. So that way people listening can check you out.
It's really easy to go to mattplapp.com, mattplapp.com. There's a link on there. I do a daily podcast. Every single day I record a podcast and launch it. Every single day. And that's been going on for 2.5 years. The last 5 months, I've been doing a daily blog. So I just finished writing tomorrow's blog this morning. Nice. And then there's links on there for our company, you know, getdryver.com and then americasbestrestaurants.com. And, you know, we're sincerely in it for a reason to help restaurants just sell more food. And I'm a hardcore believer. It comes in, sales happens from marketing. And if you've got your customers' data and you use it correctly and you give them, you know, no BS reasons to do business with you and you talk to them more often in a manner they like, they'll come eat more food.
I love that. Well, you heard it here, guys. Once again, Matt Plapp, CEO of America's Best Restaurants and Dryver. Thanks for joining the Whisking It All podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate having me on.
If you want to learn more about Whisk, head to whisk.ai and book a demo.